Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention here is to showcase and highlight men of color who are doing amazing things in the world. And I've got a guest on today who is doing just that. This guy epitomizes what a role model is. And so we're going to have a conversation about a lot of things, but let's introduce him first of all. He's an educator, a therapist, an author, a TV host. He is a commentator on CNN. He's an expert guest panelist on the Iyanla Vanzant's Fix My Life show. He does a program called Save My Son. So again, this guy really knows what it means to be a role model. So without further ado, Dr. Steve Perry, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm having the time of my life, Brother Taylor. How about you?
Oh man, we're killing it, killing it, killing it. Just loving everything that you're up to. So I want to first of all start with giving you an opportunity to, we know all the accolades, but let's go back to 10-year-old Steve. So tell us a little bit about growing up and a little bit about your family.
10-year-old Steve was in the third grade for the second time.
Okay.
I enjoyed it so much, I had to do it twice. 10-year-old Steve was in a lot of trouble. I found myself being retained probably because I was acting an entire fool. I was an angry little boy and spent a lot of time in the principal's office. So I had to become a principal or a felon because either I spent enough time in there that something had to give. I grew up like a lot of people, a lot of Black people, sadly, in very difficult circumstances. And difficult in that they weren't designed to produce success. They were designed to mitigate the impact of dreaming big. I grew up in public housing like a lot of people, like millions of people do. I grew up poor like millions of people do. The difference maker for me and a lot of people is not what happened, is how you deal with what happens. And, there are people who fall short of their own aspirations who will blame the circumstances from which they come or the circumstances in which they're in. I'm not that cat. Once you acknowledge your power, you can take control of most situations. And I don't think any one of us would consider Nelson Mandela to be a shrinking violet. But this was a brother who was in prison for 26 years, in large part because he chose to be. Because he was a man of principle, meaning that at some point he could have made a deal. He could have struck a deal with his captors and said, hey, I'll do what you want me to do and I'll get out of prison. But he knew that prison, leaving that physical prison, would have put him in a mental prison. He was a man of principle, so he was never imprisoned by the circumstances because he was bigger than his circumstances. Obviously, he lost a lot of the opportunities that many of us take for granted. But the point that I'm making is that we control our destiny. And from as young as I can remember, mine has been a goal of controlling my destiny. I remember watching Superman when he come on TV, like that Superman, the one who wasn't even muscular, the fit Superman. And I remember looking at something and bending it with his eyes. And I went outside and I saw a basketball hoop. I looked at it. Felt like if he could do it, I could do it. It didn't happen. I didn't accept that as defeat. I just figured I must be looking at it wrong. It's an approach.
Yeah. Now, this show is based on a book that I wrote called Shattering Black Male Stereotypes, eradicating the 10 most destructive media-generated illusions about Black men. And one of the illusions that has been perpetuated for a very long time is that Black men are less intelligent. Now, you obviously blow up that stereotype. So I want you to speak directly to Black men who are watching this and speak to the idea, first and foremost, that obviously we are no different than any other group of people, but speak on the importance of expressing your intelligence.
So I'll be honest with you. The first time someone called me an intellectual, I took it as an insult. I was in college. True story. I thought they were making fun of me because I was always used to not being smart. I was in remedial classes until I was in high school. And I didn't know this until I became an educator. I didn't realize that I was in a reading class when the other kids weren't. And I, like my friends, I just thought we were dumb because we did dumb things that kids do. And we got told we were dumb by everyone from our families to our school. So I didn't need any media stereotype for me. It was made pretty clear. And there was a certain peculiar sense of pride in being dumb because I felt like it made me more authentically Black. Cats who are as light-skinned as I do need to sometimes overcompensate for our Blackness, so we believe. And growing up poor, I felt like somehow fed into the stereotype that I was Black, but then I had to do the dumb thing too. So I genuinely believed I was not smart. I really did believe that. I didn't try to reconcile that there was some sort of historical context to it. I just accepted it as a fact. And so staying back and living with that scar, even being kicked out of pre-K. I mean, I was a hellion. So when I went to high school, I still didn't think I was smart. I was just the reasonable one among my friends. So when we would go to the convenience store and steal from them, I was the one who say we shouldn't take that much. When the police were chasing us for throwing snowballs at cars, I was the one to tell us that everybody to go in the house and change. So I didn't see myself as smart at all. I just saw myself as the one who was the most reasonable person in my crew. All of my friends that I was tightest with have all since been to prison, or at least been arrested. And I truly internalized not being a smart person. So when I was in college, I thought after the first Thursday of the first week of college, it was clear to me that I had used everything that I had learned in high school completely. Like everything that I knew, I was done. So everything from that first Thursday on was brand new information for me. And I was scared out of my mind because I had been treated as this leader because I knew I was a leader and I knew I hated losing, but I never saw myself as intelligent. I just want to make sure I make that. I thought that you were born smart, and smart meant you got A's in school, which I had never gotten in high school. Smart meant that you spoke a particular way, and I even still speak like somebody who grew up poor. And smart was a person who could watch Jeopardy and know the answers, and I still struggle. So I thought that smart was a particular thing. I didn't know that smart was more than that. I remember teaching my grandfather to read because he was illiterate, but I thought he was smart. So I couldn't make sense of. I couldn't make sense of people who I thought were smart, but they were not smart. So I didn't know what that meant. So when I started to take this being smart seriously, like it was the new Black for me. When I was in college in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, it was around this Black Renaissance. And I thank God that I went to college at the beginning of hip hop, because listen to KRS-One, listen to Public Enemy, listening, forcing me to read Malcolm, forcing me to read Garvey, forcing me, like, because you couldn't listen to the music if you didn't know who they were talking about. Like, you needed to read what they were talking about to understand what it was that was going on in the music. And so when Public Enemy talks about three stones from the sun, you know, like, what does that mean? I had to learn, because I couldn't even listen to the music without knowing what was going on. And so then being Black was about being an intellectual. And that was the goal, to be able to sit down and go over, like, the crew that I shifted from that old crew to a new crew. And my new crew was pretty clear, like, oh, you didn't read this? Oh, you don't know that? What do you mean you didn't read this? You haven't read Face at the Bottom of the Well? Well, man, you ain't really about being Black. Like, wait. So now I'm not Black because I don't read a lot. Like, it was that made the shift occurred. But I still didn't think that I was an intellectual. You understand? Like, I didn't think that was possible for like me. You know, I still talked, like, I still have to think of the words to say them and sound a particular way. So I get why so many brothers think that. And then there's some really pedestrian things. We can say what we want, but how many times have I been on a college campus, especially a Black college campus, because there are Black men there, there aren't as many on the white college campuses, where a girl will say something like, I want an intelligent hoodlum. Like, what the hell are you talking about? How stupid do you sound? We, even among our girls, they make us feel like being big and strong is more important than being smart. Like, being able to fight somebody at a club is more important than being smart enough not to tell you don't go to that club. Junie, so I get how we get here.
Right.
But once we're here, we can't stay here. I exist in a space now where I have to challenge Black and Latino boys to be smart. And that being smart is way cooler and much healthier than being dumb.
Absolutely.
We act like the term I don't know is get out of jail free pass. Like, I don't know, and you just ain't gonna know. Like, you're just never gonna know. You're just gonna accept not knowing as a state. Like, is this a consistent state? You're just not gonna know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't think that's a good idea.
Not a good idea. Now, so let's jump into the solutions, because I've always believed that the key to resolving a lot of the challenges in our communities is to have environments in which Black kids didn't learn that it's okay to be smart. It's cool to be smart. So you took it upon yourself to start a charter school. So tell us a little bit about Capital Prep, why you started it.
So the first school I started is a magnet school in Hartford Public Schools. So that's what I ran first. It was a magnet school. And that's an important distinction, because it's easy to get caught up in the charter versus traditional and not realize that the first school I started was in a Hartford Public School system. First.
So explain that. So there was a school and you implemented programs within that school?
No, not at all. I started it from scratch.
Okay.
So I started a school with the Hartford Public School system. So a team and I, but we developed an idea to start a school based upon a theme of social justice. And that's what we did, a prep school. And then from there, after working 10 years in that hellhole, we decided to start charter schools, because I don't believe that the American public school system has any interest in making sure that Black and Latino children can learn to read, write, and compute at the same level of white children. And I think that it is naive and childish to think that that's ever going to change. The system was not designed for our kids to learn to read, write, and compute. It's the reason why now, as we sit here in this pandemic, entire cities are not being taught anything. And we're treating the teachers like they are somehow heroes. We're literally calling them heroes for not teaching, for continuing to receive full salary and benefits, and doing as little as a half-hour instruction a week. It's disgusting, but it's a condition of the condition. So I believed that we needed to start our own schools because I didn't trust the system. Like, how stupid is this? You know, Malcolm is credited for saying that if you put your head in the lap of a man with a noose, then asking the question, whose fault is it for you being hung? We keep putting our head in the lap of people with a noose and then wonder why our kids can't read. And then we blame ourselves. We blame ourselves. You'll hear people say, well, Black people don't care about education. We don't push education on our kids. If you will go so far as to commit a crime of lying about where you live, putting your children on multiple buses, trains, or whatever vehicle you put them in to get them to a school that you are not allowed to attend, then you care about education quite a bit. If you'll apply to a lottery and pray that your child gets in, then you care about education. We don't look at people who send their kids to an elite private school that's a boarding school and don't go visit that child as not caring about education because they paid for it. But we cast that shade on parents who are typically poor and minority who don't spend as much time engaged in the schools. So we had to start schools, and we have to start more of them. We have to fight. It is really naive to think that someday the same people who have oppressed us are going to change their opinion on oppression. Just because they're friendly, just because they're Elizabeth Warren doesn't mean they're any less interested in oppressing you. Anyone who wants to send your child to a school system that has shown itself since its inception to not have a damn bit of interest in your child's well-being, anyone who's pushing that is seeking to oppress you. It doesn't matter if they're nice to you. It doesn't matter if they'll be kind to you. It doesn't matter if they're not Donald Trump. It means you judge a person by what they do. And even Dr. King said that he said the American school system does not know what to teach or how to teach. That's Dr. King said that. Dr. King called for, he wasn't just saying, like, people get this thing twisted, especially teachers unions, because they use anything to make their point. They're no different than the other side. They don't understand that the reason Dr. King wanted to desegregate schools is because he was saying that the schools that we have been forced into suck. They're terrible. And so if you keep sending us into those schools, how much education could we possibly be expected to get?
Yeah. So let's jump into the success of your school. So tell us a little bit about, number one, what is the success rate, if you will, graduation rates, how many go to college? So just give us some statistics about your system and if it's working.
Oh God, yes, it's working. 100% of our graduates go on to four-year colleges and have since we opened our first school in Hartford in 2005. 100% of Black, Latino, and mostly poor kids go on to four-year colleges. In fact, the charter school, the first charter school that we opened, this graduating class came to us as 8th graders. When we got them 5 years ago, 66% of them were reading below grade level, and 92% of them were doing math below grade level. This year, from that same class, we will send a young man to Stanford University on a full scholarship. We will send a young man to Dartmouth. We will send a young man to Penn. We could send a young woman to Wesleyan. We have kids who've gotten into Morehouse, Hampton, Howard, Spelman. We have, in a class of 34, we have 5 Ivy Leaguers in a class that came to us where 92% of them were below grade level in math. 100% of them are going on to four-year colleges. It's not just that, but they're going on to some of the best colleges in the world. So from a little city in Connecticut called Bridgeport, a class that is 100% Black and Latino, 100%, and almost 70% poor, meaning their families make less than $30,000 for a family of 3. 70%. We're going to send those kids to college at a rate of 100%, and that's in a city that only has 14.5% of its current residents have a bachelor's degree.
Wow.
So to take that one step further, according to the Clearinghouse, which is an outside organization that we have no control over. They take our kids' social security numbers and they chart them as to whether or not they stay in school. Over 85% of our kids who graduate from our school, and we send them to college at a rate of 100%, graduate with a bachelor's degree. In a town that has 14.5% bachelor's degrees, 85% of our kids will get one. So our model works. And the same thing's going to happen in Harlem. Same thing's going to happen in the Bronx. This is not a game to us. When you set expectations high for what children can do and be, and you set expectations high for the adults who work there. I got adults, a couple of them on my team who say, well, you know, it's stressful to teach during a pandemic. Okay, so take some time off, but you recognize that you're going to take time off. But what I'm not going to do is pay you to not teach. That's what's not going to happen. What's not going to happen is I'm going to bust my behind to raise money to make sure that people give you a full salary. And you keep your ass home chilling, working with your family and kids while the rest of us got to struggle. No, that's not how we're going to do this, homie. Here's what we're going to do. If you can't work at Capital Prep, I'm not going to hold it against you. But what you're not going to do is hurt my kids. That's what you're not going to do.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, what percentage of your teachers happen to be male? Obviously, there's a lack of male teachers in the school system in general. What percentage is of yours are male?
I don't know the exact number, but it's about 40%.
Okay.
And the overwhelming majority of them are Black. There are entire departments that we have that are Black males, like math. You'll find one of the biggest challenges that we face now is that the states that we operate in, New York and Connecticut, have these goofy certification rules, which hurt the profession because they limit the number of Black men in particular, but Black people in general. Less than a third of all people who are African American who take the praxis exam pass it. So 66% of our families don't gain access. 60% of our people who want to be teachers and people of color don't pass that test.
Wow. Now, in a lot of cases, especially with young Black males, they are misdiagnosed with learning disabilities because they're dealing with emotional traumas at home and God knows what other things in their environment. Does your school address that aspect of their lives to support them in dealing with their emotional development?
So let me say, I'm going to disagree with you to a degree on this.
Okay.
They're not misdiagnosed because of the traumas that they face at home, because everybody faces traumas at home.
Okay.
They're misdiagnosed because the people who are looking at them can't see them as human beings.
Got it. Good. Okay. I can align with that.
So when a white kid is struggling with his ish at 5 years old, we just see that as him being precocious. But when a Black kid is 5 years old and he's struggling with those same exact things, we see him as being learning disabled.
Yes, that's the point that I'm making. And
the disability is not on the child. It's on the adult to see him as a human being. Because the same exact, I'll give you a really quick, for instance, in our school, our first school in Hartford, we'd started a gifted and talented program. And my sons attend all of my schools. So, meaning whatever school I'm at. And so our school in Hartford, we were 85% Black and Latino. Yet 60% of our gifted and talented program was white. And so I stood in one of my staff meetings and said, yo, have y'all forgotten where you work? Like, do you see who you looking at right now? You're looking at the founder right now. You better goddamn well go back in there and figure out there has to be some other kids who are gifted. Because the numbers that you showing me don't make sense to me. We have to push our educators to look their racism in the face. And when I say educators, I mean even the Black ones. Because don't get it twisted and think that the only ones who are misdiagnosing our Black boys in particular are white girls. A lot of them are, but not all of them. It's Black girls and Black boys too who can't seem to get out of their own way. So it's not just the white colleagues. It's also all the colleagues. I've seen it from everybody. I've seen people say things that I've had to say to them, bruh, you do understand that if a white person said that, I'd have to fire him, right? So you can't say it either. You ain't never gonna be that black that you get away with racism in my school.
Got it. Now, as we wind down, I just want to, first of all, as mentioned, the intention of this show is to showcase and highlight men of color like yourself who are doing amazing things. So I want you to close out with, number one, what is the key for Black men to succeed? What would you say? What is the key for Black men who are watching the show? What's the key to their success?
I wish there were one key, because then we could all give it to everybody. So I appreciate the question and understand the timing of it and the request for brevity. But what I'll say is this. I don't know what it's going to take for you to be successful or for anybody else, but here's what I'm working through. I understand that we have to persevere, that the people who I see who are often the most successful, whatever success means to that person, what separates them from the other people is that they have the attitude that I'm going to figure this thing out. Unsuccessful people come up with excuses. Successful people come up with solutions.
Got it. Well, I happen to be an irrepressible optimist. And when I see people like yourself who, despite the odds, you chose to do something. And that's what it's going to take. Us choosing to do something to improve the quality of life for our youth. So I just want to say thank you, man, for the work that you're doing. Thank you for spending this brief time with us. I wish we had more time, but I really appreciate what you're doing. And again, want to showcase and highlight the amazing efforts you're doing with your academy.
Thank you, Bud. You take good care of yourself.
All right, man. Take care. We'll see you later. This has been another episode of Shattering the Stereotypes. My guest has been Dr. Steve Perry, a positive role model we should all follow. We'll see you next episode. Take care.